Welcome to the episode. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for inviting me, Tammy.
Let's start by having you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, where you've been, and how long you actually worked in HR.
All right. I'm April Seaman. My professional name before I retired and took on my old nickname was Kathy Seaman. I have been in the commercial construction industry for nearly 40 years, a variety of roles in a variety of places, but I spent 30 years at my last company, which is AOI Corporation. I'm retired now and enjoying every minute of it, but my swan song, I call it, at AOI actually was human resources. I'd taken on a lot of other roles, management roles, all production roles, business development roles, and when a need arose for a new HR director, they tagged me because I knew everyone there, and I'd been through a lot on the management side with hiring and training and even discipline, although there wasn't that much of that involved, I'm happy to say. And it was a wonderful way to exit the company. And I learned a lot, and I've learned a lot about human resources since I retired.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yes. So, in spending nearly 3 decades at AOI, what drew you to the company and what made you stay there?
I had met the owners of what was at the time a very small construction company that did only interior construction, Mick Jensen, Marty McCormick. They were doing a lot of work in the downtown Omaha area, renovating buildings. This was about the time the riverfront development was going. There was a lot of activity down there. They could never find anyone to clear out the office spaces before they did construction. And I had been in the contract furniture business prior to that. So they asked me to come aboard and start a business unit that de-installed systems furniture, cubicle furniture, all the old stuff that had to be sorted and stacked and all the things. So I did that. I organized it. I hired the staff. We became recognized regionally and then nationally for our good work for dealerships and manufacturers. And that was a lot of fun, but it was something that started running itself. So then I started doing construction management. But at the very beginning, Mick and Marty, again, they were young and hadn't been in business that long. So what drew me to the company and what kept me there was autonomy. They said, we don't know how you're going to do this, but we'll help you. Have a nice day. Call us if you need anything. And for probably 15 years, that's exactly how everything worked. Of course, things change, and then you have to hire human resources, which we did, and things evolved into a slightly larger company. But it was a place early in my career and really early in the way management works now to allow employees to take those chances and represent them based on individual trust, I would say, getting to know someone, wanting them to represent you. And we built the company, and I say we, there were a number of us who stuck it out for a long time, built the company by all doing everyone else's job all the time. And it's never changed.
I like that you shared that because I think that there's something about that experience of like startup energy where you're figuring it all out and all of you are figuring it all out as you're going. So now I did look at your LinkedIn profile, so I do have your Gallup strengths, and there was something that I thought was interesting to talk about is you mentioned that you worked across multiple business units. So thinking about your adaptability Gallup strength, how did that shape your career journey?
I had a very mixed early education, grammar school, high school, college, a variety, private, public, small, large, inner city, seen a lot of different things. And when I went to college, I couldn't decide what I wanted to be in science, but I didn't know how to do that. So I went into humanities, which was the name of the degree at the time. And honestly, that and my dad's insistence on me doing everything that there was to be done, no matter what it was, just taught me that it was fun to do different things. I never thought I wanted to do one thing. I never had it in my mind that I wanted to do one thing. And so I had a number of jobs before I landed with AOI, some of them a year, some of them a couple of 3. But when I found my people, my environment, and this was 1991, I was the only woman in the room ever. Only woman in the room at the office, only woman in the room at construction meetings, only woman in the room training. And it was an environment that supported that and promoted that. And at the time, I was the luckiest person in the world.
You sound like you're lucky, because I don't think that has been traditionally an experience for women, especially in construction.
No.
Yeah, and I think, we see a lot of that emerging now, but it still is a more male-dominated field, so.
Certainly, a lot more women. In fact, AOI is owned by women now.
That is even more amazing.
So the succession plan went on for a long time, and that worked, and they're going strong right now. So the fact that the good old boys can start a startup and later on let go of it is a testament to all the people who worked there over the years, which is why moving into that HR role made so much sense for me.
It sounds like it. Looking back then, what's one moment at AOI that had a lasting impact on how you see HR?
This goes before my HR time. An employee had a death in the family, lost a small child. Found out about it at the office. I was standing in her doorway when the owner of the company came to us and said, "Where do you have to be?" And then within the next hour facilitated plane tickets, transportation to the airport, sent me with her to get on a plane and go away. And so, subsequently it was hard, and the employee had a hard time getting through that. But from the very beginning, the idea that ownership, management, them, however you want to refer to the hierarchy, didn't flinch could have been the reason I didn't leave any number of times I got frustrated and thought I should, because that happens in every job, of course. I'm saying that kiddingly, but
Yeah.
those are things. And so the ownership, recognizing the working force, was always front of everyone's mind.
And from an HR perspective,
And that's what HR should be.
It's what it should.
And I guess I think that goes without saying, but
Yes.
for
Ideally.
purposes of ideally, that is what human resources should be about.
I appreciate you sharing that, because understandably, seeing the compassion or even feeling that, I think is something, it's not necessarily that it's once in a while that happens, but kind of that continuous, like, I know that I'm supported here.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And thinking about that, after so many years at one organization, what was one of the biggest challenges that you faced in keeping yourself learning and growing?
Well, there were 2. Speaking in human resources terms, one of the challenges was stepping into the administration of human resources. I had been part of the other side of the table, the management side, the training side, the personnel management piece. I knew about employment law because I had so many direct reports over the years. When I was asked to take on the role, I knew it would be a big education. I can't really say it was a bigger education than I anticipated, but it came at a time when I think the HR industry, the path, was making big strides in shifting their focus and their slant, or trying to shift their focus and their slant to a more humanitarian way of managing those resources. So I came at it at a good time, but it was also a little bit confusing because some of the certification work and some of the, I'll call it the old guard, were rigid and all business and bottom line corporate. And those were the people that I was training with or learning from in certain cases. And that was a big adjustment. That was hard to do. But as a result, I gained so much. You know, you always learn better when it's hard.
Absolutely. The adversity does that for you. I think it's interesting that you're talking in, there is that perception that HR was the personnel office. And probably back in your day, I don't even want to say it like that.
It was personnel.
Yes. And so I think, coming in with your relational skills, that was probably a good balance for you then. So at that time.
It was. I like I said, I didn't really, climbing ladders and running around, which was part of the job. Well, and then in HR, at one point I was the safety director.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then HR and safety merged for a while, which is something else about human resources that was fantastic, was the safety element, especially in our industry. That was really interesting. But yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. And Chris always said, the owner of the company, that she liked it because I knew I did the report card day at work where we brought our kids in to talk about report cards. And so I knew everybody's kids. And that put a different slant, I believe, on my relationship with the employees and what we had to talk about, whether it was easy or whether that was hard.
Yeah, I can see that. Knowing your people. And that's really, I think, from an HR perspective, a lot of times, and I don't mean to look at it from a perspective of, you go into an office and shut a door and then you just push paper around.
And that's all anybody thinks HR does anyway. And then you read about 400 people getting the same form letter that says you're fired because of your performance, and you've never had a performance review. And that isn't just 400 people that happens to. It happens to people all the time. You're fired.
Yeah.
We're not going to help you out here. We're just going to help you out the door.
Which is sad because
that's not what human resources. It should be called something else.
I agree with you on that. And it's not 400 people, it's 400 families that are impacted by that,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, and looking at your position as an HR director at AOI, what accomplishment are you especially proud of?
Navigating COVID.
Oh, wow. Yes. I think most people would probably bring that up. Tell us about that.
I was working from home, limited hours in my semi-retirement phase. It became an issue, obviously. COVID became a big
For
issue.
everybody.
And it was a big issue in the
world.
In the construction world. And AOI does a lot of interior construction. So that was challenging. But we went a year with no cases of COVID, which is pretty sensational. And everyone was agreeable to what we were trying. We weren't heavy-handed. We had contracts that required us to do certain things and track certain things. It was a very tight wire to walk at the time. Probably the tightest political wire of my career when it comes to that and unions.
Okay.
Those, there's good, there's bad, it's great. What do we do now? No, you're wrong. No, I can't say that. No, you're wrong. Can't say that. Navigating that, I think, successfully over the course of that couple of years when we really had to track things was an accomplishment.
I think it impacted HR on multiple levels. So like you talked about the safety part of it, also moving people from traditional work environments to home work environments, especially I think for AOI, office is closed. So the work itself, where did that go?
Where does the work go, and what do you do when the work is gone? And having the conversations with the people and the families and the questions, and it was challenging, but kind of energizing all at the same time because it was important.
Important, and I'm so glad we're on this side of it.
Yes,
Certainly.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We made it through that, yeah.
Although a friend of mine just got back from a cruise with COVID, so
Oh, gosh.
so much for having fun.
That's right. That's right. Especially cruising. Yeah. Okay, so looking at today, we see so many professionals changing jobs every few years as part of their career growth. You chose a different path, spending 3 decades at one company. What do you think HR professionals can learn from that kind of long-term commitment?
First, let me qualify this by saying I do not think there's anything particularly admirable about staying someplace for 30 years. It's not, I didn't stay somewhere because I was raised to get a job and keep a job, even though my grandma would have loved that. Mm-hmm. I have championed employees to leave the company. No one's listening to that.
Yes.
Because I think you only grow when you change, or you only change when you grow. And so I think HR professionals need to be aware of what's going on today and maybe tomorrow. And I think we need to get over what's happening in 5 years. Mm-hmm. I think we need to recognize, reward, review whatever the interaction is on the regular. And I think then people might stay longer and business continuity would benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But running things like you think everybody's staying for 30 years is very faulty logic, always has been, and especially now. Mm-hmm. You lose sight of things, and especially you can lose sight of people. And often it's not the ones that have been there a long time, but you lose sight of the new ones because you just think they'll be around later and you can catch up and learn from them. So I think, and the C-suite, whatever you want to call that, executive level, the pressures there have become much more extraordinary than they have been before, with administrative issues, government issues, big picture issues. Not that HR is not a big picture issue, but HR needs to find more power at the table.
I like that you said that because I teach business as well. So businesses are dynamic and they're responding to their environment changes internally and externally. So I think that that long-term commitment is valuable, I think, to have the knowledge transfer that's going on and the building.
Institutional memory and knowledge, right.
But then also you want to help your people grow as well. So rather than thinking that you're going to do the same job for 30 years, this job's going to change. Mm-hmm. So that expectation. And I think most people, you mentioned that when you sat down, is, I wanted to learn and I wanted to grow and take on different challenges and do something that maybe build something that somebody else could take over for you.
Right. And I managed to find a place where I had 5 jobs in those years, 5 distinctly different job descriptions over those years. And I never had to get reoriented at a company or change my benefits or
Yeah.
It was, and that's unusual. But had I not been able to do that, I would have worked for 6 different employers in that same amount of time.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about that stability too.
Yes.
So knowing that I have a place here, I'm comfortable with growing in this job or in a different job here.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that. So what advice then would you give to someone starting out in HR today about building meaningful, lasting relationships at work?
Be honest. Don't say it. Be honest. Don't say it. Whatever it is you're thinking, don't say it. That's number one. There's a obvious joke in human resources that you can't be friends with employees, and that's a bunch of baloney, and really we all know that. But the most important thing coming into it, because you want to you want to relate to people, but you can't commiserate. And there's a big difference. And it's hard, especially if you're going into human resources from your psychology degree and you're very empathetic and you really are going into it for all the reasons that the HR world needs you. Mm-hmm. But it's very easy to fall into what happens in any classroom, in any culture. The conversations that shouldn't be happening, talking about somebody instead of to somebody. So that's really tricky. That's thing one. The other thing would be find the education path that you want to take. There's so many factors in human resources. There's 20 different jobs in human resources, or the 4 pillars. And you don't have to know all of that. You just have to find some place where you can learn all of that, and hopefully that's working. Hopefully you don't have to decide that and then go find your job. Hopefully you find a job in human resources if you're just entering your career. And work from the inside. Learn what you love. This is a terrible thing for an HR person to say, but there is no shame in taking a job and finding out that is not the job for you and moving on. There is no shame in that.
I'm glad that you say that, because when I do coach individuals that are, career exploring or, path finding, especially young folks who delay their work experience is what I'm seeing. They're not working when they're teenagers anymore. They're very busy with their school life. Getting that diverse work experience, a lot of the times your career will be driven by the things that you learned that you didn't like.
Exactly. Yeah. What don't you like?
Yes.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah, it is. I like that. So thanks for sharing that as well. So you've continued to stay connected even after retirement, so including your mentoring and your volunteering, which is where I found you, actually.
Right.
So why is that important to you?
I've always felt connected to the community. I grew up and was educated in part by the community, by neighbors, by somebody else's teacher, by somebody else's uncle, just life experiences. So it's organic. I like people. I'm so curious. I love to know how things work and what drives people to be where they are and do what they're doing. And I learned more about that in HR.
So I do have a follow-up with that. What have you discovered about yourself since stepping back from a full-time HR role?
What they say about retirement is true.
Tell us.
You don't have as much time as you had when you were working. It seems like, and I do a lot of volunteer work and some local activism and some things like that. So it's very busy. A lot of it is behind the scenes on the phone or on the computer, what have you, but it's very time consuming. But people used to tell me, oh yeah, just wait till you retire, you won't have any time at all. It's like people know you're retired and ask you to do them a favor or do a podcast in the middle of the afternoon on Wednesday.
Lunchtime, yeah.
But I found out that I don't want to do menial, unimportant things that much. I mean, I love to sit on the deck. I love to look at flowers and garden. Mm-hmm. I love to spend self-care time, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing anything anymore if I don't want to do it. And that's the best thing that I have found out about myself. Because we're all in a career and you do everything for someone else. Mm-hmm. Which is, I didn't want to be self-employed. I never wanted to be, never wanted to own the company or be the boss. I didn't mind being accountable to someone. It's great.
I like that, though. And thinking about, I think that it's interesting when people, I have a friend who just started, she started her retirement, I think, the beginning of July. And I think she's still adjusting, and they say it takes a little bit of that time, but it's really exciting at the very beginning, but there is a little bit of, especially for her, because she had about a 40-year career here at Metro, by the way.
I need to be doing something.
It's the identity, don't you think? It's shifting that.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because most of the people I know who have retired that I knew from work, my colleagues in the HR world or maybe just the business development world, people around the business retired, and most of them just dropped out. Yeah. And when I run into them, they're the ones at the phone store that can't figure out how to trade in their phone. And I don't really. I don't think that's me. It could have been, but I found out that it's not.
Still growing. I like
Still
that.
growing.
So let's wrap up with your perspective then on some discussions in HR. So I usually this is kind of a hot topic area, but related to career longevity. Do you think younger professionals today can still build decades-long careers at one company, or has the workplace shifted to towards career mobility?
I do think that young professionals can build toward a career, a long career. I'm talking from a construction and trades standpoint when I say this. I'm not talking about IT or technology necessarily.
Healthcare.
But even or health, but even in what I'll call a more stable and less fluid environment like construction, not the workflow, but who's doing the building. Companies, industry is much more accountable or has been much more disrupted by government regulation and compliance demands. And so I think it's difficult to expect a company to have longevity. I think if you're celebrating your 40th anniversary or your 140th anniversary now, and you think you've got longevity and you've had longevity, that's great. But I'm not sure that's going to be the case in the next 20 or 30 years. Companies and purposes, and some of this is AI. Some of this has been reading about and thinking about and observing AI. I think we think things have changed quick. I don't think we can project. I hope Metropolitan Community College is here in 10 years.
I hope it's here in another 50.
I hope so too. But I don't think that should keep us from wanting to. I know some really happy young professionals who work for ethical organizations who want them to succeed, and it's obvious. Typically, they're bigger companies that want that, or if they're smaller, they're at risk because they're smaller. So I'm not sure it's realistic to think you can do that in the mid-range company. Career longevity, too, we used to think that was 20 or 30 years, and maybe now that's really 4 or 5 or 3 to 6.
Well, and a lot of, when we're talking about careers, people most times change their careers 5 to 7 times. So
is it 5 to 7?
Yeah. So, I mean, it really could be,
adaptability is important.
It is. And I'm glad that you talked about it, though, from the industry of construction, because I would say the people that I know that are in those types of career fields are in those career fields for the long term. There's a buildup from going to an apprentice to a journeyman. They look at that as they're building their career, and they're doing the type of work that they love. I'm glad that you talked about AI, because that has come up in every conversation that I've had.
Sure.
Everybody's talking about it. I was at the ICANN conference. I saw you there, by the way. But I was sitting at my table with, it must have been probably 10 to 12 of us sitting there, and AI came up, and everybody was talking about how they're using it. And we were all from different there was at least 3 people from education there, but we were all from different perspectives, and I thought it was just amazing to hear how their jobs, their responsibilities are impacted by that, and a lot of it was, I'm going to say, very positive. They're like, this is amazing. I have the ability to do these things, and then I can explore and be more creative in these other ways that I'm, addressing problems at work. I think that certainly that I wonder, what will AOI look like with AI?
Exactly.
There. Yeah.
Well, and in terms of, and it's interesting that you bring that up. So this is a plug for AOI. One of their business units is a modular commercial construction product that is ordered, designed, rendered, and computer ordered to the, 0/1000th of an inch to fit a particular space. And they've been representing this company now for about 15 years. I sold this product in my business development years. And it's a company, because they took a chance when they did, is pretty well positioned for the future of construction, because drywall's going away. The old AI again.
Yes.
Things are going to move faster. Materials are going to come faster. things are changing. So if you've got adaptability, if you're strategic and adaptable like me, you can stay someplace 30 years.
Yeah. Yes.
But adaptability is huge no matter where you are on the
To find your place.
payroll line, yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. I appreciate that. And we talked earlier, it's like that's a topic that we need to dive deeper into. So, looking at employee experience, then, what's one lesson from your time at AOI about creating a workplace where people want to stay and grow?
How it was done?
In what way? The culture of it?
Culture's so overused.
It is.
Family is so overused. It was a very, in the early days, a forgiving environment. Nobody ever threw anyone else under the bus. So it was trust developed from a very early handful of employees. So that was actually kind of easy. As we grew, that becomes harder to foster and gain. But it was truly interconnected people who talked and saw each other. When we started, our chairs bumped because we were in such small spaces.
Oh.
I mean, that's where it started. Of course, we have big luxury offices now. It's a beautiful space. But it's still, and there are still a lot of people who have been there a long time.
Yeah.
And that says something. There's
does.
people a lot younger than I am who have been there a long time.
Establishing trusting relationships. I think that organizationally that is challenging because a lot of times it's organic. Like you said, sometimes it's just putting 5 people in a room that this is your work environment, and that's where that gets created.
It's true. You work it out or you can't. And if you can't, then then it's a different conversation. Then it's the hard conversation about who doesn't belong in the room.
And then it's HR.
Yep. And then you have to hire somebody to write a job description and tell them why they shouldn't be in the room.
Yeah. So thinking about the future of HR, if you were starting your career again today, what's one skill you'd focus on developing to be more successful in the world of HR?
That's the hardest question.
It is.
That's the hardest question. I think slowing down is not a skill.
Oh.
But I think maybe listening is a skill. Listening. Spend more time listening.
I think you kind of mentioned that at the very beginning a little bit, where you said, yeah, don't say it. You're like, be honest, but don't say it. Yeah.
Spend more time listening and understanding. The world is full of all the stories of, I thought this, but it was really that. And reading the headlines doesn't tell the story. So listening and slowing down enough to do it, because in HR, everybody's hair's on fire. It doesn't matter the size of the organization. There are a million things going on. HR is regularly unappreciated. It always has been. Doesn't matter where you sit, whether you're at the executive table or you're hidden in the closet. HR seems like a necessity to many companies. Even AOI, who embraces the process, it's like, and then we have to have this too.
Yes.
And it's not like that. There should be a place at the table for every HR director. There should not be someone who runs human resources in a company who isn't included in decision making. Not all of it, doesn't have to be all of it, but some of it. And that happens. I know a lot of HR professionals who battle that in their role. So finding a place where you can find your seat. That's the job you need to leave after 6 months or a year.
Good to know. Good to know. I really appreciate this. This has been a very thoughtful conversation. And I appreciate you, sharing your reflections from your career. If our listeners could take one thing away from what you learned from your journey, what would you want that to be?
Build a relationship every time you have an opportunity. Sometimes it takes a while. People are so different. A little bit of kindness today could result in a payback years down the road emotionally because someone knew they could trust you. It's very important. It doesn't matter if you're in HR. I don't care what your job is. Develop trust. Don't lie to people.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I told our videographer that when I met you, you were just compelling. I wanted to talk to you. So I thank you for having me.
I appreciate having you, and I always appreciate you. I know that you've come into my classroom and shared your story, so I really think that this was a great way to capture some of that and be able to let it live beyond you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'll keep
you.
sending kids to Metro.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tammy.